discuss these sobering statistics and more, we're joined by our Tuesday MPs. Stephen McKinnon is a Quebec Liberal MP, Karen Vecchio is an Ontario Conservative MP, and Jenny Kwan, a BC New Democrat MP. Welcome to you all. The stats kind of mind-blowing on that, but I don't want to really get into that. That's a bigger discussion than we have time for. But I guess I'm curious as to why you think no one's tracking these, Stephen. What's going on?
It's very perplexing. You know, we had this 10-year assault on data in the Harper government.
I knew you were going to get a shot in on that.
Well, it must be mentioned. Yeah. I mean, we had no long-form census and a pretty blatant disregard for all things, whether socioeconomic studies or the social sciences generally. But clearly shocking that we are not measuring this. You cannot fix what you cannot measure, and in this case, I think we have to go on faith that there is a serious problem here. We think in the budget we've put a pretty good down payment on combating child poverty, but one thing is certain, Don, no child deserves to have a system fail them so catastrophically as this system appears to have failed them.
You've got to find them in order to help them, though, and the stats aren't there to show where they are.
Well, indeed, but I think now this report will illuminate a lot of decision making, and this is clearly an unacceptable situation
Karen.
in Canada.
Well, first of all, let's just point out the last 10 years we talk about data. We recognize that in 2011 is when the long-form census then became from mandatory to voluntary. So we can't put it all into 10 years. So I just wanted to correct that myth there. But you know what it is? It's very, very concerning. We have to recognize that we shouldn't be leaving First Nations behind. We need to make sure that they have the proper programs, whether it's through education or social development or infrastructure. We need to make sure those programs are there. My concern is we will continue putting money in there, but we do need to see how the money is being spent as well. It needs to be transparent to make sure that it is going to fight against those important issues like poverty.
Okay. Any thoughts on this, Jamie?
Well, I do. I mean, I think that, yes, collecting data is important, but in addition to that, the truth is, under the Harper government, we've had an attitude about Aboriginal issues where it's just an Aboriginal community issues. We saw, for example, the missing murdered women. Over 1,200 women were murdered or went missing, and then we had the Harper government then say that is a First Nations issue. Here we have children living in poverty, astounding poverty, and right now what we need to do is to make it our nation's issue, all of Canadians' issues. And then in addition to that, we need to actually see the government, the Liberal government, walk the walk and talk the talk as well. And that is to match the resources of what they promise to the community.
All right, I want to move on because there's a lot to talk about here. Very quickly on the transgender bill. It seems to me that a lot of the existing legislation would cover discrimination against transgendered people, but this, as the minister was saying minutes ago, singles them out as a result of intense advocacy, is how she described it. Is this bill necessary, though, Jenny?
Yes, I say it is absolutely necessary. You have a group of community members who face discrimination and abuse regularly. And, you know, if you say to them, yeah, okay, it's okay, you're covered under the Human Rights Act, so go follow that procedure. And, of course, it's not really dealt with effectively. Here we highlight it and we say very specifically that people should be treated with respect. Nobody should be discriminated against. Now, I'll just say this. This has been under the hard work of, Sven Robinson, Bill 6A, Randall Garrison. He's tabled this bill, and the government's pretty well adopted that now. The big question is, why didn't the Liberals, for example, today, had an opportunity when a motion was tabled by Randall at around noonish to pass this through a unanimous stage with a motion in the House? And it was the Liberals who actually spoke against it, not the Conservatives. And then, of course, later on in the afternoon, the Liberals moved a similar motion as Randall did earlier in the day, and then it was the Conservatives who then spoke against it for a unanimous motion. People are playing games. Let's get on with it. This is about people's lives and it's about their rights. And then let's make sure it gets through the House expeditiously, and let's make sure it gets through Senate expeditiously as well.
Karen, the Conservatives have... There's been some Conservatives that have opposed this in the past. I'm curious what your sense is now. Is this getting fairly widespread support in the Conservative
You know,
caucus?
I truly believe it is. I have spoken to many of my colleagues about it that will be supporting it. I know that in the past, some of them have not. But I think what it needs to do is we do need to go forward. This is something about equality, and we need to educate Canadians as well. So by putting this out there, it is letting people know how important it is that all people are treated equally, regardless of their gender.
One need only look south of the border in states like North Carolina, where you know, they have these bathroom bills and so on that specifically target and single out transgendered Americans.
Says your birth certificate guides which washroom you use, basically.
Indeed. So look, it's great that we are able to, and I do have to lift my hat to the New Democrats and Mr. Garrison. I mean, you know, this is clearly something that's Liberal Party has long advocated, and the New Democrats have long advocated. It's good redress.
Yesterday there was an interesting, I guess you could call it stunt. You know, basically, procedurally, things happened to move a vote very quickly onto the floor. The Liberals were caught without a large number of MPs and ended up being a tie. And for only the 10th time since Confederation, the Speaker had to break the tie and say the Liberal amendments or the Liberal bill could move forward. There's been a little bit more as to what caused that, notably a funeral that the Prime Minister's principal secretary's mother died, and he was there, and a few others. But tell me what you think, Stephen McKinnon. Is this a procedural stunt, or is this a wake-up call for the Liberals? Hey, be ready, because you never know when you're going to be called to work.
Well, look, there's a lot of partisanship in Parliament, but the thing that people don't see is a lot of collaboration behind the scenes. Clearly, we have our differences on various issues, but a lot of collaboration between the whips and the House leaders and so on. This was a little off script. Good shot across the bow. Indeed, we got caught probably with not quite enough members, but we were able to make sure that we mobilized them and win the vote, and we were very happy to win the vote and keep the business of Parliament going, and that bill is an important bill and a lot's riding on it. So, you know, lesson learned, and I think more lessons will be learned in the days and weeks ahead in Parliament.
I don't know which one of the two opposition parties was the mischief maker on this. I think it was the NDs, wasn't it?
Well,
It looked pretty concocted.
I mean, what was the stunt? What was the stunt? We call a vote. It happens all the time in the House of Commons at any time. When a bill comes back after third reading, it's tabled and you call a vote. The Liberals this morning called a vote, and then we were all there. So it's not the NDP's fault when the Liberals didn't show up for work.
Well,
they need to be there to vote. And then, you know, the truth of the matter is that this is an important bill. And this bill, I have to say this, right? Actually, the government sat, and the Prime Minister actually sat with the Avios workers and said that they supported them and that they were going to protect their jobs. What did this bill do? Sold them out. And so, you know, we were telling the government we don't support this bill. We wanted to vote on it, and we called the vote. They didn't have the numbers, and then the Speaker had to break the vote.
Let Karen have her quick say, and then you can...
Well, you know, when we talk about it winning a vote, you want to vote because the Speaker had to stand up in the 9th time in history. He had to stand up and make that decision, and I actually spoke to the Speaker about that today, and he was quite surprised. But the bottom line is there was only 139 Liberals in their seats. We start 11 o'clock in the morning, unless it's Fridays, and it's up to us, all of us, to be here to show up on time for work. And I recognize that we're all busy, but there is a rule. I believe it's probably in all the caucuses, 15 minutes away from Parliament during the day. And so that's really important. And I think that just proved that they weren't too close.
Look,
our last word to you
for
on this
people
one.
watching, it's all really just fun and games behind the scenes. The opposition took a big swing at us, and we were able to duck it. Yeah. But let's be clear, there was an NDP member who had amendments on a bill that Ms. Kwan just said is very important, and he dropped his objections essentially to the bill, and in order to force the vote. So they let go of the principle to take a big swing, and the big swing, the big roundhouse right, failed to connect.
Which the amendments would have been at committee as well. Would have been brought up at committee as well.
Well,
just saying.
Everyone's woken up, and I'm sure the whip now has that whipping it around all the time now, watching out, because they were in the seats this morning.
Never
that's
a dull
sure.
moment, Bob.
All right, thank
Never
you all.
a dull
Appreciate
moment.
you coming in.